3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4.
תודה רבה.
One, two.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can hear me? And if you want to hand them the mics, then can we ask your help if needed? Can you show Dana how to operate this one? בולטת לרעה. Good morning. We would like to start this briefing, and I should say this weekly briefing, because it's our intention. We'll send it also to the group in text, but we plan to have this on a regular basis, so you should know. You should pencil, please, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. on a regular basis. We'll do a briefing with foreign media, so you can keep it this time in the week close for you, so we can share with you the latest. I would like to start by handing over the floor to Deputy Foreign Minister Haskel. She would start with remarks, and then we'll open it for questions. Please, Deputy Foreign Minister.
Thank you very much, Oren. So, after not convening for several years, the EU Foreign Minister decided to hold a meeting of the Association Council with Israel soon. Foreign Minister Gideon Saar welcomed the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, for her announcement following the EU Foreign Ministers' meeting on December 16th, that the Council meeting will take place as soon as possible. The Association Council is the highest body responsible for overseeing and guiding the EU-Israel Cooperation Agreement. For years, the Council was not convened. In 2022, a meeting took place for the first time in over a decade, partially online due to COVID-19. Convening the Association Council is an important step in EU-Israel relations, a topic discussed during Foreign Minister Saar meeting with Kaja Kallas. Israel's view the Council's convening, which was avoided for years, is an important tool to promote cooperation with its largest trading partner, as a significant platform to present its position on Middle Eastern issues. I'm going towards the issues concerning Syria in regards to Israel. In light of violations of the Israel-Syrian disengagement agreement from May 1974, the entry of armed militants into the buffer zone in breach of the agreement, and even attack on UNDOF position, Israel's action was required. This was necessary for defensive purposes due to threats posed by jihadist groups operating near the border, to prevent a scenario similar to the 7th of October in this area. This is a limited and temporary operation. Israel will continue to defend itself and ensure its citizens' safety as necessary. It is important to avoid falling for the attempt to whitewash jihadist group in Syria. We know who they are and their true nature, even if they change their names, and we understand how dangerous they are to the West. And I brought here some of the reincarnation of al-Julani's leader of the Syrian forces, and the reincarnation time after time to unmask them. We see them here. We see him here as in ISIS, fighting with the ISIS troops, going towards. He became the founder of the Al-Nusra Front, another terrorist organization. Today, he's here at the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Okay? These are terrorist organizations, and this is a wolf in mutton clothes. So, I want also to draw your attention to a study by Henry Jackson Society, published in London 2 days ago. The study highlights manipulation by Hamas to inflate casualty numbers. Do we have? Great. The entire study is based on data from Gaza and exposes inconsistencies and manipulation in the figures released. The study also raised questions about the role of media outlets that fail to verify the numbers fabricated by Hamas and report them almost exclusively as facts. In regards to, and I want just to go on some of the issues that were raised here. We see the hospital registered reports of the casualties in Gaza as reported by Hamas Ministry of Health, showing that the amount of casualties fighting age is only 45%. But we can see the actual families' notifications here. This is 64%. Okay, if we speak about proportionality, these are the real facts. Talking also about children, okay, where they actually report 37%, while the children was 22%. Women is the same number as well. And so it's important to note how they do it. The key findings of this report go to men listed as women to inflate female fatalities, adult registered as children by Hamas, disproportionate death of fighting age of men, which meaning that men aged 15 to 45, contradicting claims that civilian populations are being disproportionately. This data analysis indicates that most of the fatalities of men are between the fighting age 15 to 45. It also, there's the inclusion of natural death in reporting the death tolls of the war, and the media underreporting of combatants' deaths. These are the key findings of this report. Another issue that was raised yesterday was a statement by the WFP director. Another example of false data regarding Gaza is a statement by the director of the World Food Program regarding the numbers of trucks that entered Gaza in November. She claimed only 2 WFP trucks entered. However, the fact shows that 847 WFP trucks were coordinated into Gaza Strip during November. And I also wanted to show you some of the numbers that we've brought from Kogat as well. We show, first of all, the month of December, which is this month, showing the total trucks that actually entered until now is 2,207. This is only this month, and we haven't finished it yet. And the WFP number of trucks is 750. Remember, the month of November is actually 2,670 trucks. The number of trucks entered by WFP was 847. If we look only on today, there is a backlog of 750 trucks who are waiting to be distributed. This is not a problem of entering the trucks into Gaza, but the problem with the World Food Program and other organizations is the logistical issues on actually how to facilitate the entrance of goods into the Palestinian civilians. So, as of today, there's a backlog of 750 trucks that are waiting to be distributed inside Gaza. And just yesterday, we have led 254 trucks that actually entered into Gaza. So it's important for me to point out these facts today as well. Obviously, in regards to Gaza, our main objectives continues, and right now is to bring back our family members, 100 family members who are being held in the dungeons of tortures of Hamas. And we are working to bring them back home. Yesterday, it was decided by the Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar to open a new Israeli embassy in Moldova to strengthen our friendship. Relationship between Israel and Moldova are friendly, and both countries seek to deepen and expand them. Moldova already has an embassy in Israel, and it is time for Israel to have an embassy in Moldova and a resident ambassador as well. Foreign Minister Sar informed Moldova Foreign Minister Mihai Popșoi of his decision to open an embassy in Chișinău. We express this differently, Chișinău, which will occur as soon as possible in 2025. Sar instructed his ministry director general to locate a suitable building and begin the process of appointing an Israeli ambassador to Moldova. Minister Gideon Sa'ar's decision to close the Israeli embassy in Dublin was made in light of the extreme anti-Israeli policies of the Irish government. Notably, Israel's ambassador to Ireland was recalled following Ireland's unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. Last week, Ireland announced its support for South Africa's case against Israel at the ICJ, accusing Israel of genocide, but more so, attempting to redefine the definition of genocide in international law to politically manipulate the fabricated allegation against Israel to suit their agenda. Ireland's actions and rhetorics are rooted in delegitimization and demonization of the Jewish state, alongside double standard. Ireland has crossed all red lines in its treatment of Israel. Israel will prioritize its resources in advancing bilateral relations with countries based on their attitude towards Israel. The last remark is we welcome the decision of the UK, Japan, and China to downgrade their travel warnings to Israel. This is a significant step that will promote economic and tourism ties between the countries. These three nations are the first to take this step, and we expect more countries to follow in normalizing their travel warnings to Israel. Thank you very much, and we can open to questions.
Minister, question, please. Yes.
Hi, thank you, Deputy Foreign Minister. Does Israel anticipate a direct, significant Turkish military intervention in Syria? And if so, what, if anything, is Israel doing to help its friends and allies in the area, specifically the Kurds?
So we are following that up close. We know that there are negotiations for a ceasefire between the Turkish and the Americans. We are very concerned about some advancements and some actions that were taken this morning as well. We're following up closely what's been happening in Koban as well, and we're very worried about it. Israel's entrance into the buffer zone is a step of defense of our country in order to make sure that another 7th of October by jihadists is not committed from that border. It is temporary and it is limited.
Yes, please. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you for this call, and I'm glad it'll take place every week. I'm Yonatan from the New York Times. I have two questions about Syria, and then I guess if we have some more time, I'll ask about the other topics. But about Syria, so Al-Shara said yesterday that he was willing to abide by the 1974 disengagement agreement, Al-Shara, Al-Jolani, and that he does not see a reason for Israel to hold on to the territory it does in Syria because Syria no longer poses a threat. So I was wondering, what is your stance on, you're saying the operation is temporary. Well, what would bring to Israeli withdrawal? What kind of sign you will see from Syria that will make you believe that now it is safe? And are you willing to openly engage with Al-Jolani? And given all of the recent diplomatic arrivals in Syria, has Israel been messaging the current or the forming Syrian leadership either directly or indirectly? That's one question. Second question about Syria is that we reported yesterday about a letter sent by Deborah Tice, the mother of missing American journalist Austin Tice, to Gal Hirsch, where she asked him for Israel to stop some of its bombardments north of Damascus in a place that she said she believed her son was held in some prison there. And she also asked for Israel's help in finding her son. So does Israel plan to somehow join this search operation? And has it, first of all, does Israel confirm receiving this letter and taking any action about it? Thank you.
As far as I know, we haven't received in the government the letter or the remarks, but I'm sure. So we can look into it and see whether it was accepted at the Prime Minister's office and at the Foreign Ministry. Here's confirmed it was received. Look, the situation is very complicated, obviously. Our attempt and our actions within Syria mainly is to make sure that terrorist organizations don't have access to highly sophisticated weapons, ballistic missiles, including chemical weapons as well. I think that no one in this world, after seeing the images of the first Syrian war, in which Assad used the allegation that he used chemical weapons against families and children. Those images are still haunting many people around the world. I'm not sure that this person is not going to misuse chemical weapons as well. Do you think it's safe to keep it there in his hand? My answer will be no. If you ask me about the situation in Syria and also how we are, with the declarations of al-Jolani in Western medias, I've actually seen yesterday a Western media reporters standing beside a table with some of these rebels' troops. One of them was wearing an ISIS flag on his arm, and the reporter actually told him to take off because it doesn't look good in Western countries. Okay? We are not fooled by the rhetoric, westernized rhetoric that they are speaking to the media right now. We know who these people are. If you would tell me that you can leave your daughter in Majd al-Shams, if you can live in Majd al-Shams with your daughters when you know that a former ISIS commander sits right beside this border, that the founder of al-Nusra's troops are sitting right beside this border, I won't take that risk. I don't think you would either. And so more than just watching on what they're actually saying, we are following up close their actions. And their actions are going to be an indication for us on whether we can or we cannot let our guards further back down.
Thank you. Yes, please, James.
Hello, thanks. This is James Mackenzie from Reuters. I wonder if you could tell us again about Syria. The way you're talking about the new entity in Syria seems a little bit more skeptical, well, quite a bit more skeptical than previous comments from ministers who said that while they don't really know what the new entity is going to be like, they want good neighborly relationships. Could you tell, is there any kind of channel of communication between Israel and the new power in Syria at the moment? And another question on Syria, what is Israel's attitude towards the continuation of Russian bases in Syria?
Look, it's important to say we are not interfering in what's happening internally in Syria. But I think that Israel is the most experienced country in conflicts in regards of different leadership who are saying one thing, but then behind the scenes are doing something different. Started also with the Oslo Accord with Yasser Arafat, where he said out publicly that he wants peace, but behind he actually funded terrorism, suicide bombers, bomb labs, and created them in order to murder Israelis. We know what it means when you speak to the Western media in one terms, but behind the scene, your actions are doing something completely different. And I think that the biggest lesson that we've actually learned from something like that was the 7th of October, where thousands of people here in Israel have paid the gravest, the most horrifying price for that kind of illusion. Little girls were raped, elderly were burned, parents were murdered in front of their children. And personally, for me, since the 7th of October, it has been my greatest mission to make sure that something like that will never happen. And it means that we need our eyes open and not to be deceived by certain images. And so, as I said before also, we will follow up closely the actions of what is happening in Syria, and we'll make sure that those terrorist organizations don't have the capability, high sophisticated capability for mass murder of our people.
Question about whether you're in contact with them?
We are in contact with some of our allies and some of the people the minorities who actually live there. We've been in contact with some of the Kurdish representatives and the Druze representatives. I'm sure you've probably seen some of the declaration of the Kurdish, of the Alawis, and the Druze community that we're also extremely concerned about there as well. There hasn't been any specific official communication.
Russia?
About the bases in Russia, we see it as partially an internal issue of the things that are unfolding there, and we're following it up closely.
Yes, please. Other questions? Yes.
Thanks again. So now not Syria related. One is about UNRWA. So with the two bills set to move into effect late January, bill specifically, well, the first bill specifically discusses UNRWA's operations in East Jerusalem. I was wondering if you can comment on to what extent are the two bills intended to also limit or in some way even banish UNRWA from operating in the West Bank and Gaza as well. And then also about the bill, we've heard reports that the foreign ministry lobbied for the addendum asking that the diplomatic immunity for UNRWA staff be revoked, the addendum that wasn't included in the law. We heard that the foreign ministry was actually lobbying for it not to be included for concerns about how this would affect Israel diplomatically.
What do you mean by the addendum? Okay. About what? About not including
the diplomatic immunity
from UNRWA staff?
So I was wondering, how do you view these two bills as supportive of Israel's foreign policy?
Well, I can. Look, at the end of the day, we have transferred a lot of information to the United Nations and to our allies, the contributing countries, about UNRWA's activity, particularly since October 7, knowing that UNRWA's workers participated in the 7th of October massacre. This organization has actually for years paved the way towards the worst massacre in the state of Israel. The international community had a whole year to try and investigate, reform, change, even the acknowledgement of what had occurred because of their international organization. They have used the immunity in their facilities to cover up for Hamas military bases and operations. Not even a word. They had a whole year to try and change it and work together in order to reform it, to make sure that they reform a rotten to the core organization that was taken over by Hamas. And they didn't. They decided to cover it up. And when they take that kind of approach, we have to be able to defend our people as well against such atrocities too. I don't think that an international organization in New York, that its worker would have participated in a massacre in New York, would even stay there for 48 hours. He would be immediately kicked out of the country. And we waited for a whole year. We hoped for a change. We hoped for a dialogue with the United Nations, but they refused. They continued constantly to cover it up and continue to build lies upon lies about this organization. So, with the political side of UNRWA, we were left with no other choice but to defend our people, meaning UNRWA will be out of Jerusalem. It will be out of Israel territories. It has no place here in our country. More so.
In Gaza.
Look, the West Bank is an issue for the Palestinian Authority. They will have to deal with it. If you haven't been following up, look on what's been happening in Jenin refugee camp. Many of those UNRWA refugee camps in the West Banks are hubs of terror. They're terror nests where the Palestinian Authority can't even control them. The Palestinians are suffering even more than the Israelis from the terrorism that grows based from these organizations' refugee camps. It's a bigger issue for them. And so this is an issue for the Palestinian Authority finally to deal about how it visions their control over their territory. And what we've seen in the recent day, you've seen how the Palestinian Authority is dealing with the Jenin refugee camps. In Gaza, obviously, it's a completely different situation, mainly because of the humanitarian situation. Instead of choosing a political agenda in distribution, in humanitarian aid facilitation, I think that if the international community would have worked better together with Israel, I think the Palestinians would have benefited much more from that, and actual humanitarian aid would have been facilitated to Palestinians. The fact that UNRWA failed its mission of humanitarian aid, where Hamas looted many of these trucks, where it actually took taxes in the Rafah crossing on every trucks coming in, pocketing that money, selling the humanitarian goods in the markets to gain more money to pay for terrorists. Okay? That was a major issue in the capability of facilitating real humanitarian to Palestinians who are in desperate need. It was stolen by Hamas, because Hamas controlled UNRWA. So look, obviously, the more cooperation we will have with the international community and with private organizations or international organization, the better the situation will be, because UNRWA is incapable of actually doing that. It failed its mission as well. The fact is that Israel has no limitation on the entrance of humanitarian aid, on the amount of humanitarian aid going into Gaza. The main issue is the logistic, is facilitating the goods that are coming in into the Palestinians, and that's the actual problem. That's why I showed you we have a backlog of more than 500 trucks waiting already in Gaza just to be distributed. And so I think that this is something that the international organization has to address and bring it. I think now we've just passed also an agreement, not an agreement, but a decision, a governmental decision on visas to be given to different international organizations. I hope that many more will cooperate with us. I think that one of the proof on how efficiently that can work is the polio vaccine operation. That was coordinated with UNICEF and with the World Health Organization. Within a few weeks, more than 500,000, I think it was 600,000 Palestinian children received the vaccine. No one stole it, no one sold it to them, it was facilitated to them. It operated actually really well. And I think that if we're gonna put the politics of the international community and Guterres in particular aside, and will concentrate on actually facilitating humanitarian aid with the proper organization who has a lot of experience all around the world with millions of people in much more complicated areas and situations, I think we can actually do far better for that. It is in our best interest that humanitarian aid will reach Palestinians, because then we can fight against Hamas. It is in Hamas' best interest not to facilitate humanitarian aid, because then they know the international community is putting pressure on Israel to hold its operation. And it's contradicting. And so, I really hope that now coming in with this law, the international community can put the politics aside and that we can work together in actually facilitating that, finding a better way to actually distribute logistically that, and bringing more good organizations that can help the Palestinians. Yeah, the visa is also an issue. Israel will not issue a visa to UNRWA staff. We are very happy to issue visas to other international organizations that we're working close in cooperation. More so, we had a good cooperation with some organization on some of the people that they actually employ in Gaza. Last week, we have indicated to the World Central Kitchen more than 64 terrorists who tried to infiltrate to work through that organization. They fired them. This is a good cooperation, making sure that Hamas doesn't take over the humanitarian effort and the humanitarian goods as well.
Just to add to the Deputy Foreign Minister words, the notion that humanitarian aid equals UNRWA is false.
Yeah.
And people who are advocating this, unfortunately, doing it for political reasons. And the Deputy Foreign Minister referred to the Secretary General Guterres' position on this. We know already that most of the humanitarian aid entering Gaza is not going through UNRWA. But from a political point of view, the Secretary General insists on channeling as much as possible energy and aid through UNRWA, and by this harming the cause itself. So this is a political position that anyone who cares about what's happening in Gaza needs to oppose it. Thank you. Yes, one last question, please.
Follow-up question. Foreign Minister has openly said he favors perhaps a confederation in Syria in the future, autonomy for the Kurds and the Druze. Israel is in southern Lebanon, in areas where there's some Druze population, not far from major Druze population concentrations. What is Israel doing to advance the Druze autonomy, given that its stay there appears to be open-ended, given that we're hearing about meetings with village elders, open cooperation with...
Specifically in Lebanon, you mean?
Lebanon, southern Syria. I meant southern Syria. Is Israel actually working on setting up a Druze autonomy or a Druze mini-state in the future?
Look, as I said, first of all, we do not interfere in internal issues of what's happening in Syria. But with our greatest concern, we are following up on what's happening with the Druze villages. Look, there is a very close communication. Many family members from the Druze community are connected. There are family members who live here in Israel who they have close relatives who are living there. And they are very concerned. I personally also received some phone calls really in great concern of what's going to happen there. And I understand their worries and their anxieties about it. I mean, it is a very complicated and delicate situation. And with what we've seen in the last war, it can deteriorate very quickly to very violent and monstrous situations. So we are following that up closely. But at this point, we do not interfere in any of the internal situation within Syria, and we're waiting to see on how it actually unfolds. But we have expressed our hopes. We do hope that this new Syrian government will be an inclusive government that respects its minority and respects their rights as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. נכון, בבוקר.
אני לא אהיה.
באמת?
בסדר, תתקשי.
בואו רק נצא מהמצלמות.
זה נעצר ב-23. למה השאירו להם...